Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another iTWire video. Today I'm with David Tudehope. He's the CEO of Macquarie Telecom. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex.
So I thought I'd ask to you, in the traditional way, to ask you if you could please tell us about Macquarie Telecom, your range of products and services leading up through to your very recent rebrand. We can see the logo behind you, and then any career highlights you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, we started 24 years ago. We were one of the very first telecoms to enter the industry at the same time as Optus.
I remember those days, the deregulation of the telecommunications industry.
Yeah, it was challenging days. We're a real challenger brand in that environment, deregulating the industry, and in those early days we championed the deregulation of local calls. It was largely through our own efforts. Fixed to mobile calls were deregulated through a lot of efforts. So we're really proud of the work we did in terms of opening up the industry. There's still some work to go in that. And our business was focused around telecommunication services. Right up until about 2000, and at that time we launched data networking services, soon after data centres, and we had quite a revolutionary concept at the time that data centres would in fact become the centre of the network.
Ooh.
And I think today time has proven that's the case.
Absolutely.
But back then it was hard for IT managers because they were very proud of their own computer rooms, and the idea of letting go of things only appealed to the more innovative.
Sure.
And then we also launched a mobile service, NBN service, in the mid-2000s, and have grown that today, where we have 3 different mobile MVNO services.
Right, I didn't know that. There you go.
So that's got a pretty broad breadth of services, and also around the mid-2000s we launched our government business, where we provide cyber security services to federal government agencies.
So they need it with all those hack attacks out there?
They do. So that's kind of been our journey as a business. It's been a fantastic journey, but challenging all the way through. And just to finish your last part of your question, we have launched our new brands last week, and really recognise that our customers are 3 segments. They're business customers that are customers of our telecom business, medium to large companies. Second business segment is cloud services, Macquarie Cloud Services, and they're focused on the more tech-savvy businesses and software as a service companies and businesses bought in the web. And the third business for us is government, and Macquarie Government focuses on government agencies and is very much down the path of cyber security and cloud computing services.
Sure. Just off the top of my head, I'm just wondering if you supply any security services to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. We had the Prime Minister and Scott and the Treasurer saying it's all never been hacked, unhackable. So you probably can't say if you do, but
I can. They're not one of our customers.
Okay, yeah.
But because it's all on the public record.
Sure.
Yeah, but we do about 42% of federal government agencies use us for cyber security, and our role there is protecting against viruses and hackers. So we check all the internet and all the email to make sure that there's nothing coming in from outside.
And I guess some of those Macquarie Telecom highlights you spoke about, the milestones, there must be your milestones too as the CEO of the company. Yeah,
it's a big part of my life going to Macquarie. But there's been a really nice core group of people who've come through the years with me, and we've got lots of 10, 15, 20-year veterans here. Well,
that's also a great thing to see, because you don't normally see that these days. All these millennials are job hopping, but when you have people staying in your business, that's a sign of loyalty and a sign that they know a good thing.
Yes.
So, you've been highly critical of the industry's performance in customer service. We all have telco horror stories, it's not an uncommon thing. And you've suggested that it can't go on, much like the situation facing the banking industry. So, do you really think that there is an impending crisis of confidence?
Well, I think there's on a few measures. I think the industry is at a critical point. If, as we know, as part of the election, if Labor had come to power, there would be a banking royal commission today.
And major changes to the NBN, which we'll get to. Yeah.
Indeed. Yet the telecom industry has 4 times the number of complaints to its ombudsman than the banking industry does to their ombudsman.
Well, that's
4 times
damning figures. Very damning.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
There's also recently a Governance Institute report that rated the telecommunications industry as having the worst ethics in the view of a broad survey of Australians, of any business segment, and right down there just after the sorts of industries you wouldn't imagine. And I think there's a number of data points which says that we industry are in a very challenging position, and I think there's a risk that we take comfort from small percentage changes in figures rather than looking at the absolute position, which is we do a very poor job as an industry of looking after customers and giving them a good experience.
Well, presumably the telcos are taking their customers for granted.
I think it's actually worse than that. I think
Treating them with contempt.
Well, I think there's different sort of motivations, but the end point is that the end result for the customer is a very poor one.
Sure.
And I guess it's in that context we launched our new brand, because we wanted to bring to light that we've always been about the customer. It's been the heart of the business for 24 years.
I mean, a challenger brand to gain customer confidence.
It's
and
been
deliver
been
better
a
customer
part of
service.
it, yes.
Yeah.
I'd say in the last 5 years, though, we've really
Accelerated?
We've accelerated that, yeah. Really doubled down on that, and embraced the new research that underpins the Net Promoter Score system.
Well, I mean,
out of the US.
That's
transformed our business even further. I mean, we've always been strong there, but it's moved us from being the best of a difficult industry to being, I think, a standout. And today, our Net Promoter Score is frankly at the level where plus 63 is way above not just our own industry, which is either side of zero and sometimes a tad more, but also now takes us to a place where we're with industries that you'd actually admire and enjoy being a customer of. It's one of the highest NPS scores in Australia, and based on reported ASX results, it's probably the highest NPS score in Australia of any industry.
Right, and so no doubt, I mean, I remember writing the article at the time when you announced you were putting the NPS score, the Net Promoter Score on your front page. I remember you were challenging your competitors to follow suit. Have any of them done so that you're aware of?
Well, I think the challenge for our industry, beyond the status that we're at today, is in terms of what's changing, is that obviously the industry is going through a lot of consolidation. What underpins that consolidation quite often is synergies, which is a nice way of saying cost reduction. And a lot of those cost reductions are driven by significant reductions in Australian staff and replacement with staff offshore in lower cost destinations.
And most of us as customers of a telco have experienced that, where we ring up and we're talking to somebody offshore. And sometimes you have to go through 2 or 3 levels if you're having a particular problem before you finally hear an Australian voice.
Look, I think sometimes there is the aspect of, for some customers, they struggle with the language piece, but I'd say that's a subset.
Much less of an issue these days, I guess.
I think
really.
so, because we're such a multicultural society.
Yeah, absolutely.
The real challenge in the offshore destinations is the staff churn. Because they're paid so poorly in these countries, the way they get ahead is by changing jobs. And they change their jobs happily for $1 an hour, even 50 cents an hour, they'll change
they lose all that corporate memory.
Correct. And it's not uncommon in these outsourced offshore call centres, or even the insourced offshore call centres, to have staff churn rates anywhere between 50 and 200%. Yeah. That's to say the person you're talking to is most likely to change jobs sometime this year, and they may have had a few months' experience with the employer.
No wonder they want to so slavishly follow the script. Unplug this, replug that. I've done all that before I rang you.
Well, quite often there is a little disempowerment, which I think you're talking about there, but the other part is the fact that they just have such massive turnovers of staff, and there's no exceptions to that. Yeah. There's such demand for people, and the culture in these countries is such that changing employers is considered very acceptable.
So what have you done in that regard to minimise that?
Well, from our point of view, we've focused our customer service here in Australia, and we've really used NPS as the driver for our business. What I mean by that is, I think a lot of people adopt NPS and add to their dashboard of things to watch. Yeah. The success for us in the last 5 years has been we've made it the primary guide, the primary compass in which we make judgments in our business and make decisions. And it's not just about the customer service people in Australia, which is, it's far more than that. It's in everything we do, we measure the customer experience. And because we do it in real time, we do a fast feedback loop to the individuals who actually did the survey, who serviced the customer. Fast feedback loop if it's a detractor score, so 0 to 6, to the supervisor who calls the customer. That fast feedback loop and that energy around NPS, and completely adopting the NPS framework, has been the key to our success.
Well, that's what's set it apart from just another number or another message, and that's what makes you say that this simple measurement tool has transformed your business.
It's extraordinary. I mean, my only regret, quite frankly, is I didn't do it 12 years ago. 12 years ago, I read the article. I did what a lot of people did, which I just added to my dashboard, and that's why I say with such confidence that it's only when we've made it the true compass of our business that we've had the spectacular improvement in customer service.
So, I mean, your onshore, your Australian, your call centre, is that in this building or where?
It is. So our contacts, we've got 2 contact centres, one for the Telecom business, which is in this building here, it's about 30 metres away, and one in our data centre near Central Station.
And I guess you must really celebrate the great customer service stories, because these are real tangible results that result from these changes to bring these customer people onshore and to really make this customer service a real commitment.
Yeah, that's a very important part of it. I mean, having people measured on it, having high visibility, but as you touch on there, recognition for great stories, and we have a system of heartbeat club stories where we really draw out some fantastic staff's service stories to inspire others, and we recognise people get. We have one award which is called we get 10 tens, and we have a huge recognition of someone gets basically 10 customers in a row to give a score of 10 out of 10, which is bloody hard to achieve. A lot of customers would consider 9 to be an amazing score.
That's right.
We do 10 tens, and those epic awards, people find inspiring and encouraging.
Sure, and obviously the people around them want to achieve the same sort of...
They look and they go, look, I know my job as well as that person. Yet somehow it's not translating to customer survey scores, and they start reflecting personally on, well, maybe it's not what I'm doing, it's the way I'm doing it,
how I'm doing it,
and how I'm speaking to the person, and how I follow up and cycle back to them. It's just often those small things that makes a difference.
It's always the little things. I mean, that's a cliche, but it's so true. You're slighted by somebody on some little thing, and that's what you remember. People remember how you made them feel. That's that famous saying, not what they said to you.
No, spot on. And I think it's that growth from our NPS scores, our 50-point growth has been largely around that.
Yeah.
I'd say at the early days we did do some significant systemic changes. There were some things that we were just not getting right. And things like pre-billing, checking the bill before it goes out.
I was going to say, what were some of those things?
So some of those systemic changes are really important. But once we got the systemic things fixed, it was more about the way we did things.
I mean, after you've got the computers churning out the right numbers, then it comes down to the people. And that's basically, that's a very simple thing. And yet we see so many companies just ignoring it or doing it wrong. And it all comes down to the customer.
I think the challenge, if I put my the shoes of some of the others who've done things differently, not just in our industry but others, is that having the pressure of trying to perform for shareholders in the short term means that the labour arbitrage position, even though the staff are going to churn far more frequently offshore, like crazy staff churn, the immediate hit to the bottom line of doing a labour arbitrage and
it's damaging your brand.
Is such that it helps the shareholders in the short term. But I think that's right, but in the
long term,
wind forward, even just like 2 years, eventually it becomes known to customers that what might have been a great customer service story in the past, where they ring up because something goes wrong, or they need to move house or move offices, so they have a reason to engage with you. They realise that it wasn't what it used to be, and then your brand starts to suffer. And
it's two more cliches. One, bad news travels much faster than good news, and the other one is around how it's very easy to lose customer trust, very hard to earn it. And it's also the other cliche, I guess, again, is that it's always much easier to sell to a customer that you've already got than to have to advertise and try and find a new one. And so this whole business about keeping, nurturing, loving your customers, well, if you're doing that, well, that's a great credit to you. And as you have said yourself, I wish many more people did it. Any further comments on that?
No, I think you've captured the essence of it. I think it's that short-term pressure versus the medium term.
Well, it's always better to look for the future and just tell shareholders to suck it up. That's what I would say.
Well, probably I'd put it
more diplomatically.
I'd say, say to shareholders, look, yes, it might be more expensive employing Australians,
but it's worth it.
But if you get the service model right, because Australians by themselves is only part of it.
Sure, that's not the only factor.
If you get the model right, then there's a real reward for shareholders in terms of, because all the NPS research is such that happy customers stay, not surprisingly. Happy customers buy more.
Tell their friends how wonderful you are.
Exactly, tell their friends. What we found, probably 2 surprises that we didn't expect, which isn't in the research.
Please.
They also pay their bills faster.
Hey,
which
that's
kind of makes sense, doesn't it, right?
Everyone's always screaming that companies are taking forever to pay them.
If you're sitting there and you've got some bills to do, it's 5:15, they think the IT manager's thinking of leaving. You tend to pay the bill that you know is probably going to be correct. And they've done a good job for you. The bill that's kind of like full of errors, a bit tricky, there's always some complexity to it. You're more likely to go, I'll do it tomorrow when I get back.
And was there the second surprise?
I think the second surprise for us was that, frankly, we are less busy.
Hey, That's also good too.
If you fix it right the first time, it's just less phone calls, less emails, less escalations.
Better productivity, happier staff, happier customers.
Yeah, we're just less busy doing stuff because stuff gets fixed the first time.
Yeah, you're not putting out a dozen fires because you didn't do the right job in the first place.
Right, you're not having lots of emails and meetings as you resolve some issue that could have been resolved if you got it right at the beginning.
I mean, that's not doing this is the recipe for make work and look busy and fire putting outing, which is not very good English, but yes. So let's get on to the competitive environment in the telecommunications markets in Australia. What's your view, and how does the industry consolidation change the landscape? We're always consolidating; it's sort of like a cycle backwards and forwards.
Yes.
But you've been at the general surveying the landscape for quite some time. So
I think the answer is probably partly in your question, because it has for 24 years been a cycle of consolidation and new businesses grow and carve out their own place. And I think it's a dynamic, fun part of the industry, along with the changing technology. It's what we're here for. I mean, we've been very true to one segment, and we love medium to large businesses, we love medium to large government, we love tech businesses that are in that same sort of genre.
yeah,
Businesses that are big enough businesses, but typically often lack the depth of IT skills to do everything themselves, and that's the market we've targeted. I think what's arisen is businesses in the consolidation phase who do everything from the smallest consumer all the way through, in theory, to the largest government or corporate business. I think one of the lessons of our own business is that it's almost impossible to do all those segments really well, in my opinion.
yeah.
There is
Spread too thin.
and I think it's very hard to actually build a model around the needs of those customers, just so different to one another. But having said that, there's obviously been many success stories across the industry, but it's changing all the time, and certainly a big part of my life is making sure we identify new innovation.
Absolutely. And so then there's of course the NBN. What are your views on how it is shaping up, and are there the proverbial potholes in the road ahead?
Look, we've been big supporters of the NBN since it started. We still are big supporters. We think it's critical for Australia for all the right reasons. I mean, I couldn't imagine Australia without an NBN. We saw how slow the private sector was to roll out high-speed broadband before the NBN came along, and we gave it 20 years for that to happen. So the fundamentals are all right. Like everything, it's about the execution of it, and the speed and the way it's executed. And I think there's been many good decisions made in terms of in that process, and there's a good team running NBN. I think the challenge right now, of course, there's been two challenges coming up. One is around, unsurprisingly for me to say this, the customer experience. And NBN needs to recognise that that flows through to the retail service providers. If they do not execute well or don't communicate well with the end user, then that all flows through to the retail service provider.
Well, there's two people to blame. One's the retail service provider, and the other is the NBN company, because they're all related. And so the bad experiences of one retailer can tarnish the NBN company when that shouldn't be the case.
Yes. And I think the second part of it is there are definitely some challenges emerging in terms of the whole poise and the aggregation and backhaul. I think probably a more complex issue, but definitely some real challenges emerging there, and something we're working through with the NBN company.
And you must already be well connected into various parts of NBN backbone across your data centres and.
Yeah, look, NBN is really important. It's still obviously a small portion of our base, just statistically it is, and we've been business focused, but it clearly going to grow significantly over the next year or two.
And are there some great customer stories that you'd like to share?
Well, each of our businesses has some good stories. In our cloud services business, one of my favourite customers, because we've grown together, but they're just such an outstanding business model and leadership team, is Webjet.
Oh yes, see their ads on TV quite.
Yeah, they've grown from a dozen people when we first met them in St Kilda Road, led by David Clark, to being a business that's nearly $500 million in revenue.
Major.
Still, to their great credit, have a modest number of people, but it's very tech based, very focused on the user experience, and they've been a great customer. It's been great seeing them grow in that time, and we've supported them from an infrastructure point of view and allow them to grow without having to add hundreds of people. Yeah,
well, that's the important thing if you're trying to use technology to dramatically boost your productivity.
And that's straight true to their tech business nature. Then I think in the government space, we've done some really good work there as well. I mean, it's a very busy place, cybersecurity, and we get something like about 1.2 billion events a day.
Yeah.
And our job is to turn those 1.2 billion into a much smaller number of events that we look at more closely. And it's a fascinating place. We work very closely with the Australian intelligence agencies and defence and law enforcement, and it's been one of those businesses that has been very important for our government clients, but frankly, as an organisation, it's really matured our security and capability. Because we just have a unit that thinks about security.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, the antivirus companies have these R&D centres, these threat security cyber centres staffed, 24/7, looking at all of the things. Of course, at a much, to do with signatures and individual files and ransomware. But you must have quite a team of cyber security experts that are crunching these things all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot about big database work. It's about correlation analysis, and it's quite a different sort of a business in some ways. That makes it also very interesting.
Sure, and obviously they're also protecting all of Macquarie's own assets and keeping it safe from the hackers too. So I always like to talk about the future. I mean, we know the NBN is the future and it's coming, and we hear about all sorts of fibre connectivity. Sorry about that. Fibre and wireless, and there's advancements in mobile fibre technology, and 5G is on its way. But where do you see the market in a decade's time, especially around the customers that you're targeting and looking after?
Yeah, well, I think all our businesses are involved in the cloud computing space. We think about it a lot. Certainly, what the decision we made some time ago was the market was going to move to hybrid IT.
Yeah, and that's a buzzword you hear all the time now from all the players.
A couple of years ago, there was a bit of a view that the offshore public clouds will be the future. I think it's a recognition now that re-platforming application to go on those public clouds is not time and cost efficient.
Sure. And there's also the security concerns. Companies, governments want you to store your data in country.
There's that aspect, and also there's the issue of the Hotel California, the fact that they have proprietary APIs and
that's it.
Your application's never going to leave.
Yes.
I guess we've made the call that we're going to embrace the hybrid IT, actually, rather than being evangelists for one type of cloud.
Yeah.
And that's what.
That way you can be platform technology agnostic and serve the needs of your customers, whatever they're using.
That's our thinking, and that's certainly where the market is today. I think there's a great recognition now from the analysts. They're now talking hybrid OT rather than just one particular technology.
Yeah.
And we're in the co-location business with lots of data centers, space, capacity, so the tier 3 end. We've got significant private cloud service heavily focused on VMware because we love the fact that customers can move their workloads into VMware and out again, like it's portable workloads, and we think that's the future. And we completely embrace the connectivity to public DIY clouds. So that has served us well. I think in the cybersecurity space, it's moving so quickly. The threat metrics are moving so quickly, but we are, like I said, because of the volume of transactions we have, we've got a great insight into that and a great database to have an Australian perspective on the cyber threats. Yeah. In a way, people who have a smaller footprint don't. And I think because we operate at the more sort of sophisticated end of the cybersecurity space, I think we've got good access to some of the smartest people, some of the smartest operatives in that industry to understand what's relevant for our customers.
And you mentioned, co-location. I mean, you must be working with some of the major data center players in Australia, but presumably you have your own data centers too, which are hardened and.
We do.
Yeah, and in this building or out, in various parts of Australia.
Yeah, we've got. We built 2 data centres in Sydney, one at Central Station, the original one from 2000. Yeah. We've got a very large one out at Macquarie Park, and they're 15 kilometres apart, so a very nice story there. It seems to really tap into a market, a dynamic around sort of active on dark fibre. And we have a data centre in Canberra for the federal government.
Yes.
That's very focused on security.
They'll get great latency there. It's right next to them.
Yes.
So I always like to get towards the end of the interview and ask if you could please share the best piece of advice that you've ever received that's helped you to get where you are today.
Well, I think the best advice has changed over time.
Yeah.
The advice you get when you're at school is different to the one at
Sure.
university.
Absolutely.
At work. I think when I started in the business, I originally started in banking, but when I first moved from banking to start this business, I read this. I was in a library by myself for some reason, and I was doing some work, and there was a book sitting on my desk, and from the previous person, and it was a biography of US President Calvin Coolidge.
Ah.
And instead of doing what I should have been there at that time,
You started reading.
Yeah. And I found a fantastic quote from Calvin Coolidge about the importance of persistence.
Yes.
And that persistence is everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important than brilliance. It's more important than intellect. It's the most important thing.
Sure.
And that was so powerful in those early years when we had so many challenges and we didn't have any money. We were a start-up, just with individuals' own savings. We had very large and quite ruthless competitors in Telstra, there was plenty of challenges and plenty of sort of setbacks. And that persistence quote was one that I used to actually even carry in my wallet.
Yes.
For those first few years.
There you go. And so, what advice would you be following now after all these years of success that is still powering you today beyond persistence, if you can think of one?
Yeah. Look. I think that the thing I've come to learn as business is growing, and it's even more important, is just how important the right people are.
Yes.
Which starts with the right leaders and managers, but then the right people as individuals as well. And I see a big part of my job is it's about innovation and working out what the next trend is, which is the fun part. Yes, it's about regulation and trying to make it a better industry.
And it's about rallying your troops, leading them.
Yeah, and I found in that last point, the key, if you get the right people and the right leaders, so many things just take care of themselves.
Yeah, well, you've built the right foundation, and so it's not wobbly later on when you're trying to go to build extra stories. And just quickly on Telstra's ruthlessness, back in the Optus days, I was working for a telecommunications company called First Netcom, which perhaps unwisely had added elements of network marketing into their plan. And so you got 5% off all locations, from 5% off all calls to all locations at all times, and for business it was 7% off. And if you sign people up in a network marketing style, you could make money from their bills. And I just remember Telstra would send us customer bills, but they would send them on individual floppy disks. So we had boxes and boxes.
They were so helpful. That was exactly the same for us. They had no favourites amongst the wholesalers.
Oh no, yeah.
All were equally unwelcome in those days. But things have improved a bit since then. The challenges are different, but there's still challenges. Look, I'd say the biggest difference, and you'd recall from your early days, is that you were competing against Telstra, which is sort of like the boy at high school whose dad sort of owns the whole universe.
Yeah.
Like they had every customer, money beyond imagination, and was owned by the government, and then by large organisations. And then you had Optus, which was the child that just kind of had the mogul parents. It's had a series of parents, but each of them has had money also beyond your imagination. Usually offshore parents, but still, they're overseas parents. There were still extraordinary amounts of money to invest. And I think in you're kind of the kid who just has his lunch money and what he can borrow from or save from odd jobs or whatever. So I think it brings out a different sort of character.
It does. Well, you got to be something special. Tenacity, persistence, as you said, to really make it amongst that kind of competition. And it's like it's not rags to riches, but it's still that kind of feeling and sentiment where you've really succeeded.
A different starting point in the race.
Yeah, that's it.
One person started the finish line. One person started sort of well endowed.
That's it.
Halfway down the track, and you sort of start at the finish line.
At the starting line. Yeah. So, do you have any final messages for iTWire viewers and readers, and for your current and future customers, but also any final message for your competitors?
Oh, look, I think it's a great industry. I mean, I've been fortunate to be working with mentoring a number of young students at New South Wales Uni, and one of the reflections I say is you've been a long time in the industry, longer than they are old. Yeah. And my reflection is because it's such an innovative and fun industry. It's so dynamic and changing. It's actually an industry you want to be in. Yeah. And that's why I think 24 years later I'm in the industry, because whatever I talk about today, in 2 or 3 years' time, we can be different.
Yeah, or it will be something that was coming, which we're now taking for granted and using as though it had always been part of our lives, and we can't imagine being without it.
Very true.
Well, David Tudehope, CEO of Macquarie Telecom, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on the new logo and business success, and I do hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.